Hey,
Hello.
can you hear us?
There we go.
Oh my God!
Okay.
Oh my gosh, that was awful.
no,
I'm so sorry. I don't know why that was happening.
No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad it worked out. I was getting a little nervous over here, but hallelujah! Thank you, Brian, for helping.
Thank you, Brian.
He's out. No, thank you so much for doing this, Taylor. I know you're on a bit of a time crunch, so I just would love to kind of like jump right in if you're.
Let's do it. I'm so sorry about that. Let's absolutely jump in.
Well, I think it's actually perfect because we don't want to dwell too much on dating anyway. I'm sure it's a good topic to just jump in and jump right out of. So I think it works great. So I wanted to talk with you about dating because I feel like that's, it's a great bonder for women, talking about kind of our past dating regrets and mistakes. But even more so than that, I think it's great to kind of work through the things that we've learned through our dating mistakes and the things that we've discovered about ourselves. So that was sort of my intention behind picking the topic, was like to go more into that angle of it than just shit talking. Although I'm sure there will be some shit talking, at least on my part. How does that sound for you? Is that good?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Why don't we start with like a dating history? When did you start? Who did you first start dating? How old were you? What was that like?
Oh gosh. I mean, are we talking like a real relationship? Like as a person? Yeah. When I was 19, I dated a guy for like a year in college, and I was still really religious at the time, and he was really religious. And you're 19 and it's the first time you've ever been in love, and you believe that God doesn't want you to touch anybody. So you're like, this is it. I think we found it. And we were together for about a year. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you or anybody else, but I feel like your first breakup is the absolute worst and nothing even touches it. Although, I don't know, I've had one that was probably worse than that. But at the time, you've nothing to reference, and you've never felt that before. So at least all your subsequent breakups, you're like, well, I know what this is.
Totally. No, it feels catastrophic. It feels like the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also the only relationship that I didn't end myself. And maybe that's part of why, because I got dumped at 19 and I was like, never again. But yeah, it was tough. Like, he broke up with me, and then we were kind of talking about getting back together a couple months later, and then I met somebody else. But it was so brutal getting broken up with, by somebody I thought I was going to like be with forever. And yeah, all of my following relationships, I have been the one to kind of end things.
Love that.
Maybe as a result. Is this therapy? How much am I paying you?
So looking back on that relationship now, do you feel like you had any chemistry with the person? Like, if you met that person today, would you be able to have a decent conversation with them? I ask because my first relationship, I was 18, he was 34, and I can't believe it. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I can't believe that was a thing from my past. And I know that if I met that guy today, it wouldn't, like, there would just be nothing real, nothing of substance between us.
Well, he'd be retired, right? That's what are you going to talk about? Work? No, he's just golfing. Oh man, that's crazy. What an intense first relationship to have. Like, to have that age gap.
Yeah, and also I was very religious as well. I was a Mormon, so I really had no concept of like physical anything. I didn't know what cum was. Like, I had no.
Wow. So you get it. We're like totally on the same page.
No, totally. It's really wild to go from that suppressed kind of religious place to then like, oh, here's the first thing. Oh my God, this must be it. Here's the answer.
Yes, and it's like, no, you've just never had an orgasm before. That's probably what it is.
But still, looking back on it, do you feel like you guys had something real, or is it like, oh my God, can't believe that happened?
I mean, I think looking back is so hard because at the time, of course, you had something. I mean, how could you not? But I was such a different person. I focus more on, when I think back to that relationship, I think about who I was and I go, oh my gosh, I would have no chemistry with that person now.
Right.
I don't know who that is. I can't even remember who she was. I mean, when he broke up with me, I was like, just a mess. I'm crying. I'm like, I was going to stop doing stand-up for you. And he was like, well, I don't think you should stop doing it. You're really good at it. And I'm so glad that he broke up with me, because I started taking my career so much more seriously after that, in a way that I would have just, probably become a teacher and slowly stopped doing it, or done it on the weekends or something, and married that guy. So yeah, it really was such a blessing in hindsight. But yeah, if I met him now, I mean, it's so funny. He reached out like twice over the years to say, just like, hey, great, what's happening for you? And each time I was like, let's catch up. Like, let's talk on the phone or something. Like, I want to know what you're up to. And he never reached out or followed up. And like, his family still comes to shows of mine sometimes. And I've just never seen him again. It's so weird. So no, I don't think we'd have chemistry now.
My God. Why were you going to stop stand up for him?
Because I was just going to get married. I was like, we should get married like before we graduate college. I was like, we should just get married and be married, because you're it for me. And then after that relationship ended, I slowly started becoming less and less religious and kind of questioning how I felt about things. And I don't know, did you sort of have the same experience with your relationship? Was that sort of like the start? Or are you still religious?
No, definitely not religious. I would say, well, he was super atheist, like the kind of atheist who wants everybody they know to also be atheist. So he was just, constantly talking to me about that. And at the time, I was 18. I hadn't been going to church since I was 12, but then my mom got sick with cancer. So then I started going again to kind of try and navigate that. So I'm like trying, I have half my, one foot in the Mormon church and then one foot in hearing this constant messaging of like atheism. And little by little, I think his messaging started chipping away at the Mormon thing. But then once we broke up was when I actually did I would say the legitimate exploring for myself and figuring out, well, what do I feel about religion? And obviously I realized that I don't stand by it, but I think the breakup was important for me finding my own footing as a person, as opposed to just like listening to that messaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny how most relationships, besides whoever you end up with, hopefully forever, just serve a purpose to help you get to the next phase of you. And if you can view them in that way, I think that's really helpful. I mean, and yeah, I lost my mom to cancer when I was 8. And it definitely is helpful to have religion during those times when you need to sort of believe in a higher power or something more, and have a community and a belief system to support and comfort you. And then the further you get away from that, the more you kind of go, okay, is this really what I believe when nothing bad is happening to me?
Right. Oh my God. That's such a good way of thinking about it. I listened to your Myrin and of course learned about your mom and everything. And this is kind of off topic, but I'm just so curious if that when you were 8, she passed, was that when you started finding kind of your sense of humor? Was that do you think in some ways that's what made you funny? Was it like, oh, I have to be funny for the people around me? Like how did that contribute to you pursuing comedy?
Probably. I mean, I think it contributed in a variety of ways. I mean, I think you definitely develop like a darker sense of humor. I mean, I remember telling people my mom had died in like middle school and them thinking I was kidding. And you just have to learn how to like make people feel comfortable. And my sisters and I have a really dark sense of humor about it, where we will make jokes about our mom being dead all the time. And we have to like,
right?
You have to, but you have to like prepare. Like when people bring their partners home for Thanksgiving, you have to be like, hey, we're going to make some pretty fucked up comments and don't laugh too hard, but like, don't be sad because that ruins the vibe. It's a very uncomfortable position to be in, trying to date one of us.
Sure. Well, it's great that all you guys are on the same page with being funny about it. I would say I have 3 older brothers and it's the same thing for us, where it was like, even at our mom's funeral, one memory that jumps to mind is like the pallbearers like bumping her casket into the walls when they're trying to like get it into this little side room where the family is waiting for the service to start. And that was like, my brother made a joke about her dead body, like rolling out of the casket and her kind of reprimanding all of us. And we were all just laughing. And I think it's so helpful to get through it. Like I can't imagine if I had siblings who were just, just not able to see the humor in it. I think you really have to.
Yeah, you really do. You bond over it. And then also, this is sort of like a delayed sort of effect of it. But I think when your parent dies really young, you have this like weird unresolved need to make them like you, not just love you, but like you and be proud of you and be the type of person that they would have like wanted to hang out with and be friends with. And everyone's going, your mom's so proud of you, looking down on you. And you're like, well, if she is, I hope I'm doing cool shit. And I think it definitely drives you to be an overachiever in whatever you're doing. So, who knows? I mean, I have a lot of jokes that I'm doing in my new hour about my mom dying. And when people in the audience get uncomfortable, I do have a joke where I say, like, do you guys really think I'd be this successful at this age if I had a live mom? Like, do you really think that would have happened? I was like, no, I'd be a creative writing major who like loved myself. There's a show tonight because she died. You're welcome.
That's great. Oh my God. I loved your first special, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. So funny. I'm excited for the new one. All right. So back to this first dude, he breaks up with you. Did you do anything like insane to try to get back with him? Anything embarrassing, or did you just take it as it was and move on from it?
I mean, it was so complicated. I can barely sort of remember because it was so sort of back and forth. I mean, he broke up with me and then like the next day sent me this long email, and then it was like, it always happens. It's so confusing because then I was like, I don't know that we should get back together because you did dump me. And he's like, oh, I don't want to get back together. That's not what I meant. And then it was like this weird thing of like, oh, you want to like see if we could someday, or maybe you don't. But we were kind of just talking about, we like went and got dinner one night, or we got coffee, and we were sort of talking about getting back together. And he like brought me flowers and stuff. And I remember I went home and my parents were like, who are those from? And I'm like, oh, they're from, and they're like, okay. And then I met my next boyfriend who was an atheist and like completely different than the guy I just broken up with. And it helped me realize there were other people out there. Yeah. And totally. I remember I went to coffee with my ex one more time, and he was like, okay, so you don't want to try again. And I was just like, you don't really like me. And it's fine. Like I'm just not right for you. Like, I'm just not what you want. And because he had told me during a fight at one point, like he didn't like who I was on stage. And I remember, which is maybe part of the reason I was like, I'm going to stop doing stand up. But I'm like, oh, you mean the purest version of me? You mean my actual soul? Right. So,
oh God, it
was very weird, but still felt like he dumped me. So, I mean, it's, it wasn't like I felt victorious or anything. I was just confused for a lot of it. But once I met the next guy, that was pretty important for me as well, that relationship, as messy as it was, in getting to that next place of like, oh, I'm not really religious and I don't need to be, and I don't need to feel guilty. And he was the first person I'd really been close to that I talked to about death, and just the fact that his parents didn't talk to him about God. He's like, I've never felt like there was a God. I was like, what? There's this little voice inside all of our hearts that's whispering about God all the time. And he was like, no, I just know we die and we live a good life at first. And that's just kind of how it is. And I was like, what? So that really like broke my brain open.
Yeah. I guess for me, it was definitely being introduced to the idea that there can be more of a significance placed on this life, because you're not living for the next one. So you're not living this one out of fear, and it can almost make this one more special. That was kind of a turning point idea for me that I hadn't been introduced to for the first, 19 years of my life. So the second boyfriend, would you say, was it a tumultuous thing, or was it just, okay? Yeah,
we were on again, off again for like 4 years.
Oh God.
And it was really messy. It was really, really messy, but also really good for me. There are things about it that I got out of it that I really appreciate. And so I wouldn't take it back necessarily. I mean, he was very he sort of like, I think he helped me with the religious stuff. He definitely motivated me in my career, because at the time he was like, you're really good, but you're not getting on stage enough, because he was also a comedian. He's a writer now, but he was a comedian, and he was like, you just need to be getting up more because you're so good. And wasn't like mean about it, but I got very like competitive with him because he had such a good work ethic. And I started going, okay, well, he's, getting on stage this many times this week. I need to try to do that as well. And I was working and going to school and balancing a lot. And my whole life started changing in that next year that we were together. And again, just breaking up and getting back together and all this stuff. It's a mess, but that was a huge thing that I still give him credit for. And then also just like, I think sexually it's important anytime you meet somebody who like helps you talk about what you want, especially as a woman in relationships with men. I think it's really hard so ask for what you want and get comfortable with that. I mean, I have so many friends who just didn't have like orgasms for a long time. And, I think being with somebody who was very like, okay, what did you like? What did you not like? What would you like more? Like just having a very open dialogue was very helpful. So I give him credit for that as well. He also like had a lot of issues and lied to me and like literally just admitted to cheating on me in December. Like,
What?
So
oh my God.
I mean, it was such a mess. And it's, he has his own issues. Like I'm not even mad at him anymore, but like I broke up with him all the time because I felt like he was cheating or being unfaithful or lying. And he just, I knew the whole time. And he just lied about it for years and years. And I mean, the jokes in the special about the relationship that was on again, off again. And I say in the special, I was crazy. I always thought he was cheating on me and he wasn't. And he cheated on me in my head. And then like a month after I filmed that special, he's like, oh, I was.
Oh, dear God. I was going to ask, so what made him finally, it's so bizarre to just be like, hey, P.S. I was.
Oh,
like,
I mean.
So it was just seeing the special?
He didn't see it. It hadn't come out yet. He was just going through, I mean, without getting into too much detail for him, I mean, he was going through a really difficult period in his life and, reached out in sort of a moment of crisis and unloaded all this. It was upsetting and I had to sort of work through it, but mostly I was just relieved that I wasn't crazy because it helped me reconnect with my gut again, because I just hadn't trusted my gut in years. And he was a big part of that because I kept going, well, you always thought so-and-so was cheating on you and he wasn't.
Right.
And you were crazy and you let your insecurities. And then it was like, oh no, you were right the whole time. And like, so when you feel that deep down feeling of just knowing something, you have to listen to that.
God, yeah, I feel that. I feel that in such a deep way. Anytime I've doubted, it's always difficult when like my gut is saying one thing, the guy is saying a different thing. Then after the fact, if you find out that he was lying, then your gut's reinforced, which almost kind of perpetuates any of the behaviors that you're like, but I don't want to do that again. I don't want to fucking be that person again. So how can I not be that person when that person is saying, no, I think it's this thing, the person saying no, and then you find out that it is. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh God. Like I had that where, you were lied to by somebody who loved you. So then your next relationships, you still feel suspicious of them.
Yes.
But then you're just in circles and you're like, but I was wrong last time. So I have to get over this. Then if there was dishonesty in your next relationship, you're like, but am I wrong about this? And I should forgive this. And you just don't know. And you also don't know because you also can overreact to a mistake somebody makes in another relationship. So there have been so many ripple effects from that relationship. And it's, a lot of it is my own fault for going back to that. I mean, we've all had, I assume, have you had a relationship like that where it's not right, but you just keep going back over and over again because it's like this drug?
No, it was literally my first relationship with the guy who was significantly older than me. I knew probably I knew in my gut, honestly, probably 3 weeks after dating. I mean, I knew. And yet, because it was the first time feeling love in that way, I would say it was my first time being in love, I didn't understand that it could happen again, and it could happen again with a person who is suitable for me and that I was suitable for. So I just thought, well, because I felt this thing in such a powerful way that I haven't before, this has to be the answer. So I kept trying to force it. And one time he did break up with me, and then I left a fucking like a love letter. I tucked it under his windshield of his 1989 Ford Taurus. And it worked. It shouldn't have. It certainly shouldn't have, but it worked. And I regret that. And then I stayed with him for like a year after that. But my gut truly knew immediately. And I think after that relationship, after I did fall in love again, I realized, okay, trust your gut sooner. As soon as it starts whispering, you got to just move on that, because it knows. It always fucking knows.
Yeah, it really does. It's exhausting. I wish it didn't always know.
It would be so much easier, right? It's the gut whisperings are very hard to navigate when you're like, but I don't want it to be this, but it knows.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was something I listened to a clip on your Instagram of the podcast. I forget who it was with, but you were talking about confusing anxiety with like your gut and like the voice in your heart. And I relate to that so hard. I mean, I don't want to retread something you've already talked about, but like, oh my God, I had the same stuff of like, thinking my family was going to die if I went to sleep before 4 a.m. when I was a kid. So I just go, okay. Or if I pick the wrong fork to use at dinner, something horrible is going to happen. All of that stuff. And you go, oh, it's my gut telling me that something bad's going to happen, and I got to listen to it. And it's just anxiety. And so you lose the ability to trust yourself. I mean, I assume it's similar to, maybe having like an eating disorder or something. Like friends of mine who have struggled with eating disorders have kind of explained to me, it's like you don't know when you're hungry because you've, starved yourself or binged or done both. And your hunger signals get all confused. And it feels similarly with your gut and anxiety, where you're like, I don't know if this is fear or my gut warning me. I just can't. I can't separate the two. So I don't know when to be afraid and when to act and when to calm myself down.
Oh my God, 100%. That's very insightful, but so true. And absolutely, I struggle with eating disorders for way too long in my life, 13 years. And and they were obviously just coping mechanisms for various traumas, but they caused me to be so disconnected from myself that I felt like I was really only learning who I was and what my gut was telling me and what my emotions were telling me once I entered recovery. Like I really had no access to my true self. It's so sad, but that's really how I felt for that large portion of my life now looking back on it.
Wow.
So you're in a relationship now, is that correct?
We actually broke up somewhat recently. So there's no reason that you would know that. Oh, it's completely fine. Yeah, we were. No. There's no reason you should be sorry at all. We were long distance before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic hit, he was out in LA, but he's from New York City and was like born and raised, and loves it there. And he was out here for like 5 months, and it was so great, and I appreciated it. But you have problems, and a lot of it is exacerbated by distance. And I think in a long distance relationship, when you don't see like a light at the end of the tunnel, as far as like someone's going to move at some point, you kind of get to a place where you're like, at least I did, where I was like, I don't really know how to proceed.
Totally.
Because, it was something too, where you're like, I'm not trying to change you. Like, I love that you love where you live. I love that you are this person. I love that you feel that strongly about it, but I also feel that way about where I am. Not so much like the city I'm in, but like my whole family lives in California. And if the pandemic has taught me anything, it's that you have very limited time with the people in your life that you love.
Sure.
And so I just was like, I don't see myself ever moving. And while, I liked spending time in New York, I don't think that he felt the same way about here. And I just felt like we were sort of at a point where I had to call it for really everybody's kind of own good, and obviously care about him very much and all that. And, very grateful for the time that we had. But yeah, it was just tough. It's just, I think everybody who's in a long distance relationship or has ever been in one says the same thing, which is, yeah, you just have to have an end point in mind. And if you don't have that, it's kind of hard.
Right. Something that you both know that you're working toward. Wow. Okay. That changes things. I was going to ask what was so new and different about this relationship.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, I think every relationship every relationship is so different. And like,
sure.
Honestly, I mean, here we are oversharing, but I broke off my engagement that I talk about in the special right before he and I met. And I think if that hadn't happened, maybe I would have been a little more clear-headed about the distance, but maybe not, because I felt very strongly about him and wanted to date him and get to know him and all those things. But, being in a long distance relationship on opposite coasts was never like a goal for me. But I was coming out of this horrific, painful breakup where I was like, well, okay, I just lost a person that I felt like fit into my life in every possible way, logistically and like practically and emotionally. And I was wrong, and that fell through. So now I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to, date someone I'm falling in love with, which there's probably a balance between those things. But I've also realized in the last, few months here, that since I have like ended this more current relationship, I was like, oh, I didn't really give myself time to deal with the end of my engagement, because breaking up with a boyfriend is shitty and hard, but giving up on like a future with somebody that you had envisioned in your head and like handing a ring back to somebody and giving all that, like that was so much more painful than anything I've ever gone through, just in terms of like breakups. So I'm now in a place where I'm like in therapy going like, oh, I didn't think I was necessarily okay or like over it completely, but I thought I was further along than I am. Yeah. And so that's been interesting. I'm also a serial monogamist who has been single for like 10 months of the last 7 years of my life. So I'm in a place now where I'm like, oh, I have to be alone for a little bit so that you can hear that still quiet voice about what you should be doing.
Wow. No, yeah, I'm totally a serial monogamist as well. And I've been single maybe 2 months of my entire life.
Oh my God, we're in the same boat.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm with somebody now that I certainly hope it works out with, but it's a thought of like, oh fuck, I wish I'd left those previous relationships sooner, because those clearly weren't right. And I think the time alone could have potentially benefited me. But now I'm with somebody who's great. So now I hope to never be alone.
Oh, so now you're not single anymore. But you made it 2 months.
I made it 2 months, and then we've been together for over 4 years, which is crazy. It's so long.
Oh, wait. So you've been with somebody for 4 years, but you were single for 2 months before.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay. I misunderstood. I thought you just started seeing somebody. And had been single for the last 2 months. Okay. All right. Got it. I was like, oh my gosh, let's talk at 4 a.m. when we're sad, but you're happy. Okay. I misunderstood.
Well, I'm always sad, to be clear. I'm still open at 4 a.m. All right. Well, so I want to let you go here. If I could maybe just ask you one or two rapid questions.
I have 5 more minutes. Is that?
Good? That'd be perfect. That'd be great. So where are you at then now? Do you have some sort of a dating plan? Is that something that you think about? Are you like, oh, I just want to be single for a while and figure this shit out? Are you open to a relationship, or are you just, have you had it and you're just taking a beat?
I mean, everyone in my life who cares about me, or I'm paying to care about me, in my therapist's case, is like, you have to be alone for a minute because you keep putting it off. And it's true. I have this moment, or I have had this moment after relationships. And the one time a few years ago that I took 9 months to just be alone, my made a lot of progress and I got a lot done. And I finally got to a place that I felt like I could start seeing people again. And then I just got back with my ex. And, I've realized that a lot of my relationships have been in part a reaction to the last one ending. And
oh my God, totally.
Oh yeah. And it's, it doesn't take away from how you feel about somebody, but if your goal every day waking up is like, I don't want to be alone, I don't want to be alone, I don't want to be alone, you will find yourself in a relationship because there are so many people,
people out there. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I've definitely been, it changes relationship to relationship. And I think my ex-fiance was the first person that I really felt like, completely just like all in on, where I was like, this is it for me. I'm completely, and this is another reason it was hard to trust my gut, is that I was like, this is my person. I did it. I am ready for this. I'm right. And, there are days now that I'm like, yes, that ended and that was a chapter of my life. And it makes sense that it ended. And then there's days that I go, I probably just wasn't ready for that. And I wish that I had been, or I wish that I had, I don't think either of us were ready to get married. I think that was sort of the important takeaway from it. So there's always that like, oh, what if we had just waited to get engaged? What if we had, handled this differently or handled that differently? But yeah, that was really the one person that I felt like this is it for me. And my other relationships, with the exception of the first one that, you're a child, I've sort of seen the end coming a little bit more, or I didn't know,
totally.
Or I was like, God, yeah, maybe it could work out.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely think I want to be in a relationship. Like monogamy agrees with me.
Same.
I would like to be married. Like, I just think
Same.
that's, yeah, it's some of us are just built like that, I think. And it's just my speed. But I also want to be the type of person that I'd like to be married to. And I think I am right now, like 70% of the time, maybe. I think my engagement falling apart made me realize that that 30% really needs to be worked on, and, have done work on it in the last year, but there's still a lot to be done there. So,
I love that you said that. This is the thing that I really needed to hear actually myself. Right now I'm in this place where I'm like, God, I feel like I'm wanting to get married. I didn't ever know if I wanted to get married because of my parents' horrible relationship. And then I got to the place where I felt like I was ready. And as soon as I felt like I was ready, I was like, okay, cool. But there is a part of me that knows, I would say I'm probably around the 70% mark as well, that I'm who I want to be 70% of the time, but that it's got to be closer to 100. Maybe it doesn't have to be 100. That might be a little unrealistic for me, but it's got to be a 90, to make a commitment like that. And I think, wow, I'm so glad that you said that.
I mean, look, I'm in a lot of therapy right now, and I'm glad it is being put to good use.
No, and I also think it's really important to identify that, like, this is something I guess I learned from my second relationship, which was with somebody that I loved deeply and he loved me deeply. The intentions were in the right places, and we were pretty close to getting married and loved each other deeply, but love isn't enough. And I don't think I realized that until that relationship ended. I think I just thought that love could cure all and heal all and just take us through whatever obstacles. And it became very apparent as obstacles did hit us that, like, this is not going to carry us. There's got to be a foundation beyond love. It's not the be all end all, unfortunately, I don't think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was the lesson I learned in this most current relationship, where I was like, it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but exactly what you just said, that it's great that you love this person so much and you care about them and you appreciate so much about them. But if there is no practical future, or there are, logistical problems that don't have anything to do with how you feel about the person, that's just as important as you connecting with them. And you unfortunately have to find somebody who has everything. And
right.
There's nothing worse than breaking up with somebody who just isn't, where you are, and there's other things too. So who knows? But particularly with, geographical issues, you're like, I can't even tell what is the distance and what is just us. Because being that far away from somebody, you're never going to feel like you're fully in their life.
Yep.
In the same way you'd feel with somebody who lives in the same place you do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I felt that with people that I dated long distance. It's a specific struggle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then last question here is, in which relationship were you the worst version of yourself?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. Ooh, it's so tough because I think I was a pretty rough version of myself in my relationship that was on and off, because I just felt really insecure and I was in and out and, all of that. So for a long time, I felt that way. I think with my ex-fiance, I was both the best version of myself and then the worst version of myself at the end, which is sort of crazy and painful. But I think for the majority of that relationship, I was the best version of myself and someone I wanted to be. Certainly I'm better now because I'm on antidepressants, but yeah, at the end, there were some things that happened that I couldn't handle, when like things get triggered from like your childhood pain and, something that maybe you could have worked through had you been in a better headspace. You just couldn't, given where you were. And I think that's what happened with me, where I did, crazy emotional things and I didn't handle it correctly. And it's something I felt a lot of regret about and still do. And it's very hard for both of those selves to exist in that one relationship, to feel like somebody has the best and worst of you.
Yes.
In their mind.
God. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one for sure. And I think I'm definitely the best version of myself now. And again, it's still not 90. It's still not 90. So it's maybe 78.
We're working toward the 90. Hit me up when you're at a 90. I'll let you know when I'm at a 90. We can keep each other posted.
Yeah, would be great.
All right. Thank you so much for doing this. I so enjoyed talking with you. I wish it had been longer, but this was a blast.
Absolutely. I'd love to do it again. If it didn't record, for whatever reason, let me know and we'll set up a new time to do it.
Oh man. Thanks.
Truly such a pleasure.
No, yeah, I certainly hope it did, but thank you. Have fun. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.